Fantasy+Pet Text Xiangluo, reborn in a fantasy world, possesses a healthy body that was not obtained in the previous life, a talent for cultivating demons, and lives freely and freely after breaking out of marriage. What kind of reborn son of luck, she is still reborn and not afraid of you. Jiuchong, under the guise of a sickly seedling, is doing things that even a healthy person cannot do. He thinks it's good to do it this way, and he can do whatever he wants. The only thing I am not satisfied with is that my own daughter.in.law, who originally belonged to me, was returned by myself and I have to work hard to recover her. This is a bit difficult. The stars fill the sky, the moon is like a hook, and under the evergreen tree, tears of an alliance are shed. Your intention, knowing my heart, Qingming remains steadfast in proving death. Life has its limits, thoughts are boundless, and 1,000 sails meet once they pass by. The sky is not old, love is hard to break, and the fragrance falls with 9 layers of laughter in the spring breeze. Keywords of the novel. Fragrant Blossom 9-fold no pop-ups, Fragrant Blossom 9-fold TXT complete collection download, Fragrant Blossom 9-fold latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Rebirth Triumph. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Rebirth Triumph. Pain, like bones all over my body shattering, isn't I dead? How could it still be so painful? Xiangluo struggled to open her eyes and saw a somewhat dim space, with towering rocks on both sides. A bright light shone down from above, and the sound of water flowing could still be heard in her ears. Perceiving oneself lying on a huge stone, where is this? She wanted to get up and take a look, but when she moved, the pain on her body became stronger and she couldn't move at all. She felt a bit confused. Even if she was born as a sickly child, fortunately, the Yun family is a family of ancient martial arts medicine, with the strength to rely on expensive medicinal materials to maintain her life. Although she only lived until the age of 13, her body was weak. How could death be so painful instead? At this moment, a memory that did not belong to her appeared in her mind. She was stunned. After her death, she did not follow the path of the underworld, nor did she drink Meng Patang. Instead, she was reincarnated and reborn directly in a cultivation world that prioritizes the strong. A young girl who had just been blatantly killed by many young girls. The original owner, also known as Yun Xiangluo, was 13 years old and the only daughter of Yun Qingye, the second son of the old general of the Protectorate General's mansion of the Tian Shan Empire in the Tianqian continent. Before the age of 10, Yun Xiangluo's life was still very happy, but since her parents had an accident at the age of 10, her life has not been described as miserable. This time, the largest sect in the mainland, Qingyin sect, came to the Tian Shan Empire to select disciples. Only 10 people were selected, and all young men and girls under the age of 15 from major aristocratic families in the imperial city who awakened their souls entered the imperial training ground of the Tian Shan Empire for testing. The remaining 10 people were selected. The cultivation in this world is divided into 9 levels. Scholar, Yuan, Spirit, King, Zun, Zong, Emperor, Saint, and God. Each level also has 9 sub-levels. Scholar level is an entry-level, but only above the elemental level can one truly start practicing. Just because in order to break through the elemental level, one must first condense the elemental baby, which is also the foundation of a cultivator's cultivation, more important than the spiritual root. After awakening the human soul from birth, the original owner has only cultivated to level 9 at the scholar level for 13 years, but has not condensed into a primordial baby and cannot break through the elemental level. Most of his peers have cultivation above the elemental level, so he is laughed at as a useless material. It's impossible for her to be selected based on her cultivation. She didn't want to come, but the members of the Yun family wanted to take this opportunity to get rid of her useless talent, so they were forced to come. And the current situation of the original owner is the result of being calculated in front of everyone. Yun Xiangluo sighed, at least the original owner had the health she had hoped for in her past life, although her current physical condition was not very good. The top priority now is to deal with physical problems, otherwise, we will have to die again. Xiangluo was attacked and fell from above. Although she reacted quickly and used spiritual power to support her when she finally landed, her spiritual power at the level of a scholar was not enough to be fully utilized, and she fell extremely badly. She was born weak in her previous life and couldn't do anything, but the Yun family is from an ancient martial arts family, mainly focused on medicine. She started learning medicine from a young age and is known as a medical genius. So she was very clear about her body at this moment. With all her muscles and bones broken, it was a puddle of flesh, and the original owner should have died from excessive bleeding. Even in the Yun family, there is no medicine to cure such injuries, but it's not difficult here. A third-grade recovery pill can do it. She has it, right in the storage ring. Unfortunately, she can't move it. Even if her mind can be taken out, her mouth cannot open, and she can't eat it. What should we do? Since she cannot move, the pill cannot be eaten yet, and no one will come to save her, then she can only save herself. The only way to save herself is through her cultivation of martial arts. The cultivation method that the original master practiced was the ancient practice of panga flower blossoming. She had 3 levels in her life, and she had been holding back for 10 years on the first level of condensing the primordial baby, so her cultivation did not advance. She never understood why other people's easily condensed primordial babies would be as difficult as reaching the sky with her. Xiangluo clearly felt the depressed and frustrated mood of the original owner for 10 years. Setting aside this emotion, close your eyes and try to follow the original master's previous cultivation method to see if you can cultivate. I learned from the original owner's memory that as long as I can cultivate, my body injuries can be slowly repaired. As long as she can move, she can take out the pill and take it. Although the body fell badly, fortunately the dantian was intact, with 5 weak saplings wilting inside, which is the spiritual root. At the age of 3, the original owner was tested to have 5 spiritual roots. In fact, the fewer spiritual roots, the better. Human energy is limited, and it is impossible to cultivate all spiritual roots well. Therefore, a single spiritual root will not have low achievements without special circumstances, and the 5 spiritual roots are equivalent to waste materials. Xiangluo is not discouraged. After all, she can still cultivate, can't she? Her spiritual roots cannot be made up for by hard work. With a movement of thought, she began to absorb spiritual energy into her body. She thought it would be difficult, but unexpectedly, she achieved it with just one thought. Everything she knew about the original master seemed to be something she had personally experienced. Without much time to think, after the spiritual energy entered her body, she headed straight towards the dantian. The dantian seemed to be experiencing a long drought and spring rain, and crazily began to absorb the spiritual energy. The spiritual energy in her place gathered together. This feeling is so wonderful. The dantian was soon filled with spiritual energy, and a golden light cluster appeared in the dantian, gradually forming the appearance of a baby. Young Xiangluo was extremely surprised. Yuanying, this is about to condense Yuanying. As long as Yuanying is condensed, she will pass the first level of panga flower blooming and start the real path of cultivation. Although she was pleasantly surprised, she still calmly absorbed spiritual energy. At this moment, she could not be interrupted. Once interrupted, her path to cultivation would be completely cut off. Yuanying only has one chance to solidify in his lifetime. The golden light gradually became clear from the shape of the baby, and more spiritual energy was needed. Not only was it where she was, but the spiritual energy from the entire royal training ground surged towards her. At this point, there were not many people left to enter the land of experience, about 30 or so, but only 10 remained in the end, so the competition was still fierce. A group of young girls, although they noticed that their spiritual energy was abnormal, did not pay much attention to it. They all believed that who happened to trigger the opportunity to advance and was about to advance. Their top priority now is to become the one who can stay. At this moment, they formed a small group of several people, together forcing the lonely person out of the royal training ground. The number of people left behind is slowly decreasing. At this moment, Yun Xiangluo was very fortunate that the original owner had fallen down. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for her to successfully condense the primordial baby. Those who wanted her to die would not have allowed her to condense the primordial baby. As time passed, Yuanying could clearly see her facial features, which were carved from the same mold as Yun Xiangluo. It was only then that she realized that the original owner was actually the same as her. The same name, the same surname and the same age still look exactly the same. Is there such a coincidence in the world? End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Postmortem. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Postmortem. Just as Yuanying was fully condensed, a living miniature version of herself sat cross-legged in the dantian, and the golden light transformed into clothes to wear on Yuanying. The golden little figure was extremely beautiful. At this moment, a golden flower with 5 petals appeared above the head of Motoyuki Danida, spinning like an umbrella. This flower looks a bit familiar to the eye. When her eyes lit up, it looked like the jade pendant that carried the panga flower blooming technique around her neck. So at this moment, she can be considered as truly starting the cultivation of panga flower blooming ancient technique. Subsequently, the flowers scattered countless warm rays of light, transforming into countless warm rays centered around the elixir field and spreading around the body. Wherever they went, shattered bones and broken tendons were quickly rebuilt, and the tendons were several times wider than before. The bones and meridians were purified without any impurities, and the spiritual power transformed by spiritual energy was unobstructed in the meridians. The 5 small sapling-like spiritual roots in Dantian were entwined together, enveloped by a golden light cage, slowly condensed into a spiritual root, growing into a sturdy sapling next to Yuanying. Yun Xiangluo was extremely surprised. Could the 5 spiritual roots still condense into one? She carefully probed and sensed that although the spiritual roots had condensed into one, they still possessed the 5 attributes of the 5 spiritual roots, which was simply amazing. Although I don't know what's going on, I understand a little bit that the original owner has been unsuccessful in condensing Yuanying because his muscles are not wide enough and his spiritual roots are too messy. After all, the panga flower blossom technique is an ancient technique, and such superior techniques naturally require a body with strong meridians and spiritual roots to truly inherit. Otherwise, it will be like the original owner. Although they have obtained the cultivation method, they will be like useless materials. This time, she broke her tendons and bones, causing her to die and be reborn. By a twist of fate, she rebuilt her tendons and directly expanded them to a level where she could practice. Even the bones are several times stronger than before, and the spiritual roots have condensed into one, looking much thicker than the 5 withered saplings before, meeting the requirements of inheriting martial arts. Alas, at first glance, I have taken advantage of myself. When her body was completely enveloped in warm currents, the pain on her body completely disappeared, followed by a sense of comfort she had never experienced before. Is this the feeling of having a healthy body? Before she could be happy, the long-suppressed cultivation began to advance due to the formation of Yuanying. Yun Xiangluo quickly got up and sat cross-legged, continuing to absorb spiritual energy, and began to advance. The small umbrella-like flower was still spinning, and Yun Xiangluo noticed that she seemed to absorb spiritual energy faster and easier than before. After being filtered by the flower, the spiritual energy was directly transformed into spiritual power, omitting a step of purifying spiritual energy, which was simpler and faster than the original master's previous cultivation. Is this the benefit of her rebirth? Although the original master did not break through the elemental level for 10 years, he never slacked off. He has been practicing hard and his spiritual energy has been repeatedly accumulated and compressed. As soon as he advances, he can see the benefits of diligence. After successfully breaking through the elemental level, the promotion did not stop. The first, second, and third levels of the elemental level only stopped after advancing 3 levels in a row. And the flower in the dantian also stopped spinning and shrunk into a small one, landing on the right side of Yuanying's bun, like a head flower. The golden dress paired with a golden flower, no matter how you look at it, you think the little one looks so wealthy. Yun Xiangluo felt the abundant spiritual power in her body, which was a pleasure she had never experienced in 13 years of her previous life from inside out. Her beautiful eyes suddenly opened, shining brightly. This kind of life is quite good. Although it was a bit unfortunate to appear, the result was still good. She can finally have a healthy body and live a good life. And this world is still a magical one, a world that once made her yearn for. In her past life, besides studying medicine, her only hobby and only practical hobby was reading novels. And fantasy novels are her favorite genre, and the kind of life where she freely pursues strength is beyond her reach. Now, she has arrived. Perhaps it was God's pity that she had lived too much in her previous life, which gave her such a chance. Isn't her experience the same as the treatment of the female protagonists in fantasy novels who are blessed by misfortune? Huh, my goodness, I forgive you for treating me unfairly in your previous life. Yun Xiangluo's gaze fell on her right hand. From the moment she sensed it, she knew that there was a hard object in her right hand, which was an audio-visual stone that the original owner's parents had given her to play with. Before falling from above, the original owner did not expect himself to be so miserable. He wanted to use a video stone to record the scene at that time and use it as evidence when he left. Now this audio-visual stone is quite convenient for oneself. Her slender hands were covered in blood stains, and a black stone was held in her hand. Is such an ordinary stone an audio-visual stone? Yun Xiangluo's thoughts moved and she received the audio-visual stone into the storage ring. When she went out, the audio-visual stone was of great use. She stood up, stretched out her arms and jumped her legs, doing all the movements she wanted and couldn't do in the previous life, and burst out laughing excitedly. Having a healthy body is really good. After getting excited, she finally thought about her current situation. She didn't forget that she was still in the royal training ground. In fact, each person who comes in has a life-saving card in their hand, which can be crushed in a life-threatening moment to leave the secret realm. Of course, they also missed the opportunity to go to the Qinyan sect. Her life-saving card was snatched away by the group of girls who attacked her and fell off the cliff. She was worried that she would crush the life-saving card and go out, as she had no intention of leaving her alive. Looking around, the space under the cliff was not very large, and it was clear at a glance that there was no way out. Looking up at the place where there was almost a glimmer of light from the sky, unless she had wings, she would definitely not be able to leave with her current strength. Looking down at the direction of the water flow, there is a small stream that can be crossed step by step. Follow the stream and the end and exit are both under the rocks, with no way out. Returning to the huge rock where she had fallen, a dried human blood stain on the stone reminded her of the previous experiences of her original owner. I lowered my head and looked at myself. There were also dried blood stains on my clothes and skirts. It was as miserable as it was, and as miserable as it was. After losing so much blood, the body recovered and surprisingly did not lose any blood. As expected, the ancient cultivation method is to leave, and the fantasy world is magical enough. But she's not going to tidy herself up, just going out like this is enough tragedy. Since she couldn't leave, she didn't figure out how to get out. Anyway, when the last 10 people were left, they would be teleported out. Those people never expected that they would benefit from misfortune and effortlessly obtain the qualification to join the Qinyan sect. Who has the ability to pursue her and come here? The current time cannot be wasted. In her past life, she cherished every minute and second of her life because she didn't know how long she could live. Although she has a healthy body in this life, she still won't waste time. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Mind Reading Techniques. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Mind Reading Techniques. Although it is the 5 spirit roots, the original master usually cultivates with slightly better fire and water spirit roots, supplemented by the other 4 spirit roots. However, because there are too many and chaotic spirit roots, the cultivation effect is not good. I don't know how effective the cultivation will be after the spiritual roots merge into one, and how to cultivate the 5 series of power. Xiangluo sat cross-legged, pinching her flower fingers with both hands to absorb spiritual energy and start practicing. As soon as she started practicing, the golden flower above Yuan Ying's head suspended and grew larger. The spiritual energy she absorbed entered the elixir field and was directly absorbed by the flower, transforming it into spiritual energy and storing it. In this way, the spiritual energy accumulated more and more along the way. She wanted to ignite the power, and with a twist of her finger, a small fireball the size of a candle bounced out and landed on the rock, burning it black a little bit. Twirling again, fine droplets of water scattered around her. Young Xiangluo was extremely surprised. The original master mainly practiced the fire spirit root and water spirit root, which were slightly better in qualifications among the 5 spirit roots, but they could only be practiced one by one. Now she can actually practice together. Does it mean that other metal, wood, and earth spiritual roots can also be cultivated together? With a movement of thought, a cluster of life breath wrapped around the fingertips. With a gentle flick, that breath of life fell onto a weed under the stone. Although the vitality was not much, the weed instantly became much more energetic, as if it had grown a little taller. This is something that the original owner couldn't do before. Does this mean that her spiritual roots are now a whole? As long as she cultivates, her spiritual roots are strengthened, and the power of all factions is equally enhanced. That is to say, once that lineage has enlightenment, she can focus on cultivating which lineage. As this lineage improves, her spiritual roots also increase, and the strength of the other 4 lineages also increases. This is simply a blessing in disguise. As long as she works hard enough, the power of the 5 elements will be equally strong. Who would say that the 5 spirit roots are useless when she sees that her 5 elements are equally powerful in the future? With a flip of her finger, a golden attack force rushed towards the nearby rock, and with a loud bang, the rock was smashed into a 1-meter deep hole by her force. Immediately, a soil power was swung out, and a small soil shield formed in front of her. Although her defense strength was not strong, it was because her current cultivation level was too low. Xiangluo tirelessly used the 5 series powers repeatedly until she could proficiently switch them, so that she could be adept in combat. It wasn't until she felt that the spiritual power in her body was being consumed too much that she stopped. It is indeed an ancient cultivation technique. After passing the first level, the benefits became apparent. However, she also understood that in order to use the 5 series power, strong spiritual support is needed, which means she needs to spend more time and effort practicing than others. She's not so happy and silly. There are still 2 levels waiting for her to conquer in the Panga flower blooming technique, and the next one is when she breaks through the king level. My cultivation level cannot exceed the level of a king in a short period of time. Let's not think about it for now. This is a place for royal training, and the spiritual energy is stronger than outside. Since I can't leave, don't waste time. Sit cross-legged and start absorbing spiritual energy for cultivation. Xiangluo couldn't see it herself. After starting her cultivation, there was a spiritual vortex above her head, absorbing the spiritual energy from the secret realm and rushing towards her. Although it wasn't as obvious as when she was condensing Yuaning before, the people in the secret realm could clearly perceive that the spiritual energy was flowing in one direction. 3 days have passed since this cultivation, and there are 10 people in the secret realm. Look at me, look at you. Even though there are only 10 of them left, how come the selection process hasn't ended yet? One of them said, someone must be hiding somewhere we can't find. What should we do? The other person said anxiously. They have searched everywhere they can, but haven't found the 11th person. I don't know how many people are hidden. 10 people instantly withdrew and looked at the others with vigilance. Needless to say, they knew that since they couldn't find the person who was hiding, they could only clear one out of them. We 10 people are usually friends, and our families also have interests in each other. Let's not use any means. Let's stick to our cultivation and strength, and let the lowest one voluntarily give up. How about that? Someone suggested. Others immediately agreed, but only the person with the lowest cultivation had no words. At this point, let him give up, unwilling to accept it. But as he watched the 9 of them look at him, he knew that giving up on his own initiative still had some sentimentality. If they really took action, they might not let themselves out alive. After all, no one wanted to offend the family behind him, only the dead would keep it a secret. People die inside, but when they go out, who knows who killed them? This is the so-called friend. In the face of interests, there is no friendship at all. Although he did not receive the token this time, he was also taught a lesson on how to treat these so-called friends in the future. If he cannot obtain the entry token, he can still go to Qingyun's sect to participate in the selection, and there is still a chance to enter Qingyun's sect, but it is more difficult and there is no need to lose his life because of it. That's all, congratulations. After thinking it through, the young man said congratulations and immediately crushed the life-saving card in his hand. He was worried that if it was too late, the other 9 people would change their minds. Sure enough, before leaving, he saw a regretful expression on the faces of the other 9 that he did not resist. Another person is missing, and the remaining 9 people pray that only one person is hidden in their hearts. Otherwise, they will have to clear out one more person. Just as they were worried, the figures of the 9 disappeared. Xiangluo, who was addicted to and practicing, sensed that her breath was not right. She quickly withdrew from the practice and stood up. The white light in front of her eyes flickered, and when she opened her eyes, she saw a large group of people in front of her. She was standing opposite everyone with 9 other young girls. Is this leaving the royal land of experience? 9 people all looked at her in unison. Who is this person? It's so miserable. Where did it hide? I can't even tell what it looks like. Xiangluo felt a bit muffled. The boy next to her didn't even open his mouth, how could she hear him speak? Damn it, it doesn't look very good either. It's causing them to clear out one of their own people. Her mouth still didn't move, but Xiangluo could still hear him speak, and her mind lit up. Is this a mind-reading technique? Immediately, she looked at the other 9 and saw a young girl who had forced the original owner to death among the 10 of them. The girl's gaze met that of Xiangluo, and her mouth remained still, but she also heard her speaking. How could it be her? That useless material from Xiangluo didn't die. No wonder they couldn't find anyone no matter how they tried to find her. There was no way up from the cliff, and they didn't dare to go down. If they did, they wouldn't be able to get up. Xiangluo had good luck. Damn it, don't fall into my hands in the future. I absolutely can't let her marry the regent. Sure enough, she could hear the other person's thoughts in her heart. Xiangluo felt a bit floating. Is this the rebirth of the golden finger? End of this chapter. Chapter 4. I Want to Divorce. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. I Want to Divorce. Xiangluo calmly withdrew her gaze. At this moment, the people across from them were all looking at the 10 of them, with any expression on their faces, proud. This was the married one among them, jealous, envious, and resentful. This was the child in the family who was not among them. Compared to the other 9 people, Xiangluo was extremely disheveled, with blood stains all over her body, and her clothes were almost indistinguishable from their original colors. A small face was also covered in blood stains. She ignored the 9 people's glances at her, and no longer listened to their voices. It was just a curse on her for not dying inside. Although she is not the original owner and cannot kill those people to avenge her, she cannot do anything. A middle-aged man wearing a snow-white brocade robe fell into the air. With a movement of his hand, 10 jade plaques appeared in front of the 10 of them. With a reach, the jade plaques fell into their hands. This is the order card of Qingyun sect. You should arrive at Qingyun sect within a month with the token to register, test your spiritual root talent, and arrange for you to practice there specifically. Remember, arrive on time, and give up if it's too late. After the man finished speaking, he rose up in the air and left, exuding a fairy-like aura. He was so cold that he disdained to say one more word to them. Yun Xiangluo looked at the token in her hand, with the 3 words Qingyun sect written on it, and her eyes sparkled with light. But this person is walking too fast, and she wants to give it a try. Can she hear what he's thinking? The tribe of the selected young girls in the crowd were extremely excited when they received the token. If someone in the family could go to Qingyun sect for cultivation, it would be a symbol of strength. The person who did not pass was envious and jealous, and wished to snatch the token. This will indeed happen, so those who receive the token will be escorted to Qingyun sect by the most powerful members of the family. Of course, these families do not include the Yun family. The Yun family stared at Yun Xiangluo with gloomy eyes. They had more than a dozen children, but not a single one was left behind. On the contrary, the abandoned Yun Xiangluo fell into the election, which was a slap in the face. The young girls from the Yun family who forced Yun Xiang off the cliff regretted it extremely much. If they had killed her directly, today's situation would not have happened, but no one dared to say. The regent has arrived. The boiling crowd suddenly quieted down with this sound. The regent Princess Jiuchong of Tian Shan Kingdom, although she only passed the imperial examination this year, has been in power for 3 years. Young Xiangluo looked up and saw that the main reason why the original owner had fallen to such a place was because she held the title of Ji Jiuchong's fiancée A.E. 3 years ago, Emperor Tian Shan wanted to marry his youngest brother, who had 2 years left to reach the crown and was so disgusted that he tried to kill him several times but couldn't achieve his wish. The sick young man who was far away from the fiefdom and left Xinjiang, who is now the regent Wang Ji Jiuchong, got married. The candidate fell on Yun Xiang, who was only 10 years old, had his parents missing and couldn't be seen by the Yun family. The world is unpredictable, and shortly after the wedding, the crown prince rebelled and poisoned the emperor. The second prince appeared with great righteousness and promptly executed the crown prince. At this moment, Li Wang, who was bedridden and unable to get up, appeared with his sick body shining brightly. With lightning speed, he extinguished the crown prince's influence and took control of the military power of the imperial city, causing the second prince to work hard. The emperor was intoxicated and unconscious. At the request of the officials, Li Wanji Jiuzhong took on the role of regent and took control of the court. From then on, Ji Jiuchong became the person that the women of Tian Shan Imperial City wanted to marry, while Yun Xiangluo became a thorn in their side. This seemingly skyrocketing engagement did not benefit the original owner in any way, but instead ended up with fate. As the crowd made way, a man wearing a snow-white brocade robe embroidered with silver dark patterns walked slowly towards him. A peerless face caught the eye, with a rich and ethereal temperament like jade, as graceful as a fairy. The refreshing gaze seemed to penetrate the void, and the profound nobility emanating from his bones made the people around him lose their sense of existence. Yun Xiangluo secretly thought to herself. No wonder she could make those girls crazy and even kill her. This beautiful skin indeed has this capital. The boy beside her couldn't help but exclaim with jealousy in his heart. He didn't look as good looking as Ji Jiuchong himself, and his cultivation talent was not as strong as Ji Jiuchong. Yun Xiangluo calmed down and just glanced at Ji Jiuchong before withdrawing her gaze. No matter how beautiful it was poison to her. She stared at her own toes, but in fact, something big was brewing in her heart. Farewell to the regent. After Ji Jiuchong stood still in front of the 10 of them, the crowd knelt down with a roar. Among the other 9 of them, including Yun Xiangluo, only Yun Xiangluo stood without kneeling. Ji Jiuchong's gaze naturally fell on her, who was bowing her head. This was not intentional by Yun Xiangluo, it was because she had not yet adapted to this kind of hierarchy in other societies. Now kneeling down was somewhat suspicious, so she decided not to kneel, nor did she want to kneel. The original owner was because he had lost his life. Therefore, she forcefully held up the uncomfortable gaze that fell on her, secretly rubbing and wanting to hear Ji Jiuchong's voice, but she found that she couldn't hear anything. Thinking of Ji Jiuchong's cultivation, she understood clearly. It seemed that these golden fingers had limitations, and she could only hear the voices of people with similar cultivation levels. If there were too many differences, she would not be able to hear them. This was the self-protection of a strong person's strength. Even so, she was not disappointed, which was already good for her. Ji Jiuchong looked at her for a while before saying, "Flat." The voice was unexpectedly cold, but it sounded extremely pleasant. Everyone cheered up, and Ji Jiuchong did not blame Yun Xiangluo for not kneeling. With a raise of her hand, a person carrying a tray walked over from behind and stood in front of Yun Xiangluo. There is no other reason, just because young Xiangluo was the first of 10 people to approach Ji Jiuchong's side, so we started with her. This is a reward for 10 of you, each with 1,000 top-grade spirit stones. When you arrive at Qingyan sect, you will work hard to cultivate, bring glory to your family, and bring glory to the Tian Shan kingdom. Ji Jiuchong said a scene sentence. There were only 10 Qiankuan bags on the tray, obviously one for each person. Yun Xiangluo rudely picked up a Qiankuan bag, which was exchanged with the original owner's life. With a sweep of divine consciousness, my mind knew the quantity of things inside, and it was indeed 1,000 top-grade spirit stones. Divine consciousness is really convenient. You don't even need to count them one by one, just scan to know the quantity. This world is indeed magical, and it seems that this life won't be boring anymore. The crowd looked enviously at the Qiankuan bag and 1,000 top-grade spirit stones in their hands, which could allow them to practice extravagantly for 3 years. After distributing the reward and speaking the scene, Ji Jiuchong was about to turn around and leave when Yun Xiangluo suddenly spoke up, "Regent, please stay." Ji Jiuchong stopped in his tracks and turned to look at her, "What's up?" "I want to withdraw." Although Yun Xiangluo trembled under Ji Jiuchong's sharp gaze, she had to withdraw for the sake of freedom and safety. "Divorce? Are you?" Ji Jiuchong's eyes narrowed. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. What to Witness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. What to Witness. Young Xiangluo. Young Xiangluo said her name directly. The girls in the crowd who harmed her exclaimed in shock upon hearing her words, and Yun Xiangluo came out alive. Why did she still want to withdraw? Does she know what she is doing? Did they hear you right? Did they withdraw, or did they withdraw from the marriage of Ji Jiuchong, which all girls want to marry? Even the other 9 people standing next to Yun Xiangluo were surprised. After all, many of them had seen Yun Xiangluo's experience in the secret realm, and they had heard of what they had not seen. I never expected that the first thing Yun Xiang did when she fell out was to divorce Ji Jiuchong. Yun Xiangluo even heard the young man beside her gloating and saying, "Ji Jiuchong, you're still today. You got divorced by a useless person, Yun Xiangluo is speechless. Young man, are you so secretly proud? You have the ability to speak up. Ji Jiuchong's eyes flickered as he never expected that the disheveled girl in front of him, who couldn't tell what she was supposed to look like, would be the one named Young Xiangluo, who bore the name of his fiancé A.E. No wonder she didn't kneel before. It turned out she was angry with herself in her heart. Although I have never paid attention to this little fiancé A.E., unfortunately, she is too well known and knows some things about her. She is a useless material that cannot condense into a primordial baby. However, she is now at the third level of the primordial level cultivation, and obviously has already condensed into a primordial baby. Although this cultivation is still equivalent to a useless material in his eyes, at least this girl is not as bad as they say. Why? Jiuchong spoke pitifully with few words. Save your life, Xiangluo replied succinctly. Jiuchong's eyes flickered. What do you say? What is the relationship between saving one's life and getting divorced from him? The regent will know by looking at this. As Xiangluo's thoughts moved, the audio-visual stone appeared in her hand. With the input of spiritual power, the image in the audio-visual stone was displayed in the void. Not only Jiuchong, but also the crowd could see it clearly. A group of gorgeous girls gathered around a girl wearing a red dress, including 3 girls from the Yun family. The girl was stripped of her life-saving card and forced to stand on the edge of the cliff, being cursed by a group of seemingly wealthy girls, all without exception, because she was not worthy of Jiuchong, and her insults were extremely unpleasant. What kind of lazy toad wants to eat swan meat? What kind of useless material without self-awareness? If it were for them, they would have committed suicide long ago. What kind of face does she have to live in this world? In the end, she was knocked off a cliff by a girl with spiritual power. All the girls in the crowd who appeared in the image turned pale, and they never expected that Xiangluo would still be able to come out alive, let alone that she had kept this hand. Not to mention anything else, their reputation has been ruined since the appearance of this image. Not to mention coveting Jiuchong, there is no big family there that would marry someone with such bad and vicious conduct to enter. Xiangluo's move was even more ruthless than killing them. Jiuchong was very surprised. He really didn't know that because of his fiancée A's reputation, Xiangluo was treated so badly that she almost died. He knew about the cliff in the secret realm, and it was a miracle for someone like her to come back alive after falling. It was only because the last 10 people would be teleported that she stood here. Otherwise, everyone would think she died inside, and the secret realm would be closed. In fact, the result was indeed the same. So she is relatively more embarrassed than others. Because of this, she resented the calamity she had brought her and refused to kneel down. From this incident, it can also be seen what kind of life she has been living since being granted marriage. Jiuchong felt a little guilty in his heart, unrelated to emotions. The girls involved in the image are all from the Tian Shan Kingdom family, and they have never been so embarrassed. If possible, I would hate to strangle my own daughter. Especially the young girl among the 9, who was now as bright as a light on her back, wished there was an underground hole to burrow into. She was extremely desperate, there was no need to think about it. The token she had worked hard to obtain to enter the Qingyun sect would be taken away by the family when she returned. No matter who she gave it to, it wouldn't be hers anymore. At first, she thought that Yunxiang had died. She was the most talented girl in the imperial city and definitely the best candidate for a regent queen. Now it seems that no regent queen has her place in the imperial city. Saying no regrets at this point is false, but regret is also useless. Jiuchong turned his head and said to the crowd, I don't know, the family education of major families is so good. This sentence almost determined the fate of those girls. A few girls couldn't bear the result and fainted. For a moment, the scene was a bit chaotic. The people's eyes and knives of those families all fell on Xiangluo. There wasn't any ugliness behind that family, but it was the first time they were exposed like this. Yunxiang ruined the reputation of the girls in their family, which is equivalent to ruining their family's reputation. She withdrew from her marriage to the regent and thought she could save her life. Jiuchong clearly realized this. Are you sure that withdrawing from marriage can save your life? If you don't die in a disaster, you will have good fortune. If you have the ability, they will come. Xiangluo didn't flinch at all. This marriage must be terminated, and if the engagement with him was effective, the original owner wouldn't have died tragically. Ji Jiuchong's eyes lit up as she looked at the young girl who had only reached his chest height, strong and stubborn, living a very transparent life. As you wish, from today on, our engagement will be terminated, and it is no longer related to men's and women's marriages. Ji Jiuchong spoke up to terminate her engagement. It was originally a marriage bestowed by the emperor to humiliate him, and there would have been no outcome. Let's just leave. It's better for the little girl to bring it up herself than for him to bring it up. Yun Xiang breathed a sigh of relief and saw Ji Jiu leave. She said again, "Prince, can you be a witness to the humiliation I have endured under the guise of your fiancé A.E.?" Ji Jiuchong felt a bit amused in her heart. "You said that, can I refuse? This little girl is quite interesting and has a lot of heart." "Witness what?" "Make a deal with the Yun family," said Yun Xiangluo in the direction of the Yun family. Ji Jiuchong's eyes flashed with appreciation. The little girl really caught the opportunity. She has a likable personality and is decisive and not procrastinating. "Please move, General Yun." Ji Jiuchong turned to the direction where the Yun family was located. General Yun Jiming glanced at Yun Xiangluo, and the girl was indeed as annoying as her mother. The face of the Yun family was ruined by the loss of their mother. But the regent king spoke up. Despite Ji Jiuchong's young age, his cultivation level is not low. Currently, no one knows his exact cultivation level, and no one has benefited from him. He had to grit his teeth and walk over, while others looked at him, wanting to know what Yun Xiangluo was up to. "I have seen the regent." Yun Jiming walked over and saluted. Ji Jiu lowered her head and gestured for Yun Xiangluo. "I have called for someone for you, and you can finish it now." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Immediate escape for life. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Immediate escape for life. General Yun, 13 years ago, my father was kicked out of the Yun family, right? Yun Xiangluo didn't refer to the Yun family owner as his grandfather, and they didn't want to. The original owner's father was kicked out of the house by the Yun family owner in order to be with her mother. She has never stepped into the threshold of the Yun family in 13 years, and she will never go there in the future. While speaking, Yun Xiangluo tried to see if she could hear Yun Jiming's voice, but unfortunately, she couldn't hear it either. This proved her previous belief that people with too much higher cultivation couldn't hear the other person's voice. It seems that we still need to work hard to cultivate and improve our cultivation. Yun Jiming took a deep breath and said, "Yes, that scoundrel rebelled against his parents for a woman. My Yun family doesn't have such a descendant. It's great, I finally understand why my dad left the Yun family." Yun Xiangluo sneered and curled her lips, unable to hear anyone present for an unspoken reason. She said that the Yun family is a heartless and unjust family, which is why her father is leaving. Yun Jiming wanted to scold her, but due to Ji Jiu's serious situation and the previous incident of his granddaughter abusing and forcing her to fall off a cliff, he dared not be too reckless, and the face of the Yun family could no longer be lifted. "Today, I would like to invite the regent to be a witness. Young Xiangluo will repay my father's debt of support to the Yun family. General Yun thinks this Qin Yun sect entry level token is enough." Young Xiangluo raised the Qin Yun sect token in her hand and asked. General Yun's eyes narrowed as she used this token to completely sever the relationship between his father and the Yun family. Her parents have been missing for 3 years, can they still come back? As for Yun Xiang falling into a useless material with 5 spiritual roots, he didn't even pay attention to her, exhausted her, and wouldn't achieve much in this life. In his eyes, this token still has greater appeal. General Yun looked at Ji Jiuchong. Although it was a bit contemptuous to cut off his relationship with his son for the sake of obtaining the Qin Yun sect token, this son had already been expelled from the house by him. It was a different story, let alone the allure of this token. He is not worried about anything else, he is worried that Ji Jiuchong may get involved in this matter. After all, when the emperor married her, the Yun family would have offended Ji Jiuchong. Ji Jiu glanced at General Yun again. The old general had made contributions to the protection of Tian Shan state, but his vision was not very good. I am just a witness, I don't care about anything else. Yun Jiming breathed a sigh of relief and immediately said, that's enough. Okay, then let's ask General Yun to make a vow. From today on, Yun Qingye's lineage has nothing to do with your Yun family anymore. In the future, no one in the Yun family should use their bloodline to attract relatives. Whoever breaks the vow will be in a state of despair. Yun Xiangluo said sharply and decisively. She wants to renounce the right of the Yun family to interfere in any of her affairs. She must walk according to her own wishes for the finally obtained freedom and healthy life. Yun's bright eyes shrank, looking at the little girl with face and blood stains in front of him. This nature reminded him of his second son, who was so gorgeous that they were exactly the same. They deserved to be father and daughter. He felt inexplicably frustrated that he didn't even want an excellent son, let alone a useless granddaughter. Without hesitation, he made a vow, which was fulfilled. Yun Xiang neatly threw the token to Yun Jiming and turned to Ji Jiuchong, saying, the regent helped me once today, and all the previous grievances were written off. The implication is that you can rest assured that I will not come to you for any reason again. After speaking, he turned around and left without any attachment. Ji Jiuchong didn't expect the little girl to be so carefree. When she said it, she really didn't have any attachment to him. This was the first time in his life that a girl had despised him so much. Yun Xiangluo quickly walked away from the path that Ji Jiuchong had made way for in front of the crowd, ignoring the various glances of those people. What she did today has offended many big families. If she wants to save her life, she must quickly leave the Tian Shan imperial city and avoid their pursuit. Based on her memory, she quickly returned to her home in the east of the city. The small courtyard was not big, but it was decorated warmly and comfortably, all of which were arranged by the original owner's parents. She has a storage ring, which is much larger than the capacity of a Qiankuan bag. It was a gift from the original owner's parents for her 5th birthday. Valuable things were all in the storage ring given to her by her parents. She simply put away daily necessities, clothes, bedding, kitchen utensils, and so on, and took everything that could be taken with her. After washing his face clean, he changed into a boy's outfit, with his hair hanging up and held in a hairpin, resembling a young boy's outfit. In the mirror is a face that is almost the same as her previous life. The eyes of Black Grape are as bright as the spring in the mountains. It seems that there are bright stars scattered from it. A plump and fair forehead is as delicate as jade with a sparkling water. Under the perky Cheong nose, the cherry blossom red lips are like blooming buds. She is no longer surprised, after all, she has all the memories of the original owner and knows what the original owner looks like. However, this face was too ostentatious, with a healthy and rosy complexion that she had never had before in her past life. She painted her face black and yellow, and the milky white boy transformed into the feeling of a rural boy, with vastly different looks. Young Xiangluo finally experienced firsthand the feeling of covering up all the ugliness with one white face. No matter how high her appearance is, she can't resist being black. Lock the door, turn around and take a look at the small courtyard. This is the home where the original owner has lived for 13 years, with the happiest memories of her and her parents. It's as if she grew up here, and I don't know if she will come back in the future. Setting aside all thoughts, quickly ran towards the nearest East City gate, now it's important to escape. She smoothly left the East Gate, but the families were still busy and didn't pay attention to her. She took a deep breath and ran towards the outside of the city with carriages and horses. I used a low-grade spirit stone to rent a flying eagle, and there are also 2 medium-grade spirit stones as a deposit. When I return the flying eagle to the destination, I will refund it to her. In fact, carriages and horses are much cheaper, but she has to leave the Tian Shan imperial city at the fastest speed to avoid the pursuit of those families, and can only hire flying eagles. Riding the flying eagle, the Tian Shun imperial city was quickly left behind from a distance until it was out of sight. In the regent's mansion, the attendant Chang Feng reported, "Master, young Xiangluo dressed up as a boy and rented a flying eagle from the east gate to leave." Ji Jiuchong's gaze paused, and he was indeed cunning enough. Knowing that he would run for his life immediately, he waved his hand and said, "Just leave, there's no need to pay attention anymore." Sending Chang Feng was just because he felt a little guilty about everything she had brought about by the engagement over the past 3 years. He wanted to protect her little life. Since that girl had her own ideas and knew how to protect herself, he didn't have to worry much. At this moment, Yun Xiangluo sat on the flying eagle. Although she was a bit wilted by the sun, her mood was extremely good. Using the entry-level token of Qinyan sect to completely sever ties with the Yun family is just one thing, mainly because she doesn't want to go to Qinyan sect. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Is a good child. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 is a good child. Qinyan sect is famous for various cultivation techniques. She practices ancient techniques, and going to Qinyan sect will not be of much help to her. In her previous life, due to her weak body, the only thing she learned was medicine. Before she could even read, she had already learned many herbs and started researching medicine. So from the beginning, she didn't plan to go to Qinyan sect, but wanted to go to Xianyan sect, which is famous for alchemy, to learn the art of alchemy. This is what she was most interested in after coming here. At this time, not only the Qinyan sect is recruiting disciples, but all major sects are also recruiting disciples. Except for several imperial cities and major sects that specially send people to select, those who want to study in sects must go to the locations of each sect to participate in assessments. This can also be seen as a symbol of friendship between various major sectors and the great empire. The selection of the Immortal Cloud sect has also begun, and the selection will take half a month. Yun Xiangluo has calculated that it will take about 8 days to get there by flying eagle, and there are still 2 days to sign up. You can also inquire about the details of the assessment and make some preparations. After 8 days of wind and sun exposure, young Xiangluo finally arrived at Xianyun town at the foot of Xianyun Zongshan. Although the flying eagle was fast, it did suffer after a long journey. Arriving at Xianyun town, my breathing felt much more relaxed. Not to mention the spiritual energy on the mountain, the spiritual energy in Xianyun town is much stronger than in other places. It is indeed a good place for cultivation. Young Xiangluo found the car and horse shop she rented from Feiying, which opened in Xianyun town, and returned the deposit to Feiying. She also inquired about the registration location of Xianyan sect. The guy enthusiastically pointed her the way, hoping to make friends with a future disciple of the Immortal Cloud sect. After all, as long as you don't break through the king level, you have to rely on their flying eagles for travel. Even if they don't pass the exam, they won't lose anything. The other party still needs to go back, right? With a better attitude, the other party will come to him to rent a flying eagle. Young Xiangluo went to the registration place first. This is the office set up by Xianyan sect, which was originally responsible for delivering messages and making it convenient for Xianyan sect people to go down the mountain. At this time, it was used for registration. Another important role is to sell elixirs. After all, the Immortal Cloud sect is famous for alchemy, and the refined elixirs naturally need to be sold. Otherwise, how can such a large Immortal Cloud sect maintain its livelihood? Young Xiangluo took out her identity card and registered, then breathed a sigh of relief and started wandering around Xianyan town. She wanted to inquire about the requirements of the previous Xianyan sect assessments, so be prepared. The day after tomorrow will be the assessment day, and she will have to stay in Xianyan town for 2 more days. First, find a place to live. At this moment, the person who came to participate in the assessment of the Immortal Cloud sect had already arrived. She asked all the inns and found them full, but surprisingly, none of them had any vacant rooms. What should we do? Young Xiangluo is a bit worried, can't she stay on the street for 2 days? The inn I finally inquired about is already the worst environment in Xianyun town. Not to mention the rooms, there is no place even for the datong shop. The shopkeeper came out from inside and saw her asking the staff, only to find out that she couldn't find a place to live. Young master, are you here to participate in the assessment of the Immortal Cloud sect? Asked the shopkeeper. Yunxiang nodded and said, yes, I just arrived today and there's no place to stay. The shopkeeper's eyes lit up as he not only owned an inn, but also a medicinal herb shop. Today, a large quantity of medicinal herbs arrived and needed to be picked and dried. There was not enough manpower, but the herbs had to be picked again tomorrow, otherwise many would be damaged, so he had to compensate. But this job must be done by knowledgeable people, and those who come to participate in the assessment of the Immortal Cloud sect must have some foundation, so it should be easy to know medicinal herbs. Young master, may I distinguish medicinal herbs? The shopkeeper asked first. Yes, I have learned to recognize medicinal herbs since I was young. I know most of them, but if you don't know them, just tell me once and I will remember them. Yun Xiangluo understood, and the shopkeeper wouldn't ask her about this for no reason. Yun Xiangluo wanted to hear the shopkeeper's voice, but the shopkeeper's cultivation level was higher than hers, at least above the spiritual level, because the young man next to her in the previous 10 had a cultivation level of Yuan level 9, which she could hear. Since you can't hear the voice of others, let's act according to the situation. She was born into a big family in her past life, and observing her behavior and words was a skill she learned from a young age. After all, not everyone likes a diseased seedling like a devouring beast. The shopkeeper twisted his beard and said, I still have a medicinal herb shop. Today, we have a lot of medicinal herbs in, and we need to manually sort them. If the young master is willing, I can provide him with free accommodation and 3 meals in the next 2 days. How about that? The shopkeeper understands that although the young master in front of him is dressed very normally, as long as he joins the Immortal Cloud sect, he will be the future alchemist. He cannot offend him, and it is good to have a good relationship. Great, thank you very much, shopkeeper. Yun Xiangluo's eyes lit up. The shopkeeper also smiled upon seeing this. He was a polite child, and if such a child had achieved success in the future, he could not be wrong. Now, it is equivalent to making friends in advance. Young master, come with me, the shopkeeper said with a smile. Yun Xiangluo immediately followed the shopkeeper towards the back. Behind was the accommodation area of the inn. The shopkeeper led her around the accommodation area and walked towards a courtyard. When she entered the courtyard, she saw 3 people picking medicinal herbs, and the packages of medicinal herbs were placed in half of the courtyard. We have a helper, the shopkeeper said with a smile. The 3 of them looked up and saw a teenager of 12 or 13 years old. They all asked in unison, is he okay? The shopkeeper turned his head to look at Yun Xiangluo and said, what do you think, young master? Yun Xiangluo walked over and looked at the medicinal herbs they had picked out, saying, this is huanyang grass, which grows in a well-lit and damp place. It is a herb that only treats insufficient yang energy. This is Atractylodes macrocephala, which nourishes the spleen, benefits the stomach, dries dampness, and harmonizes with the middle. This is snow lotus, this is 5-split huanglian, this is hopu, and this is Cistanche deserticola. Okay, the shopkeeper interrupted her with a smile. Although the medicinal herbs here are not only those she has learned, but also some that she has never heard of before, the original owner also knows a lot about the medicinal herbs here. When the 3 of them saw her numerous medicinal herbs, they didn't mistake them and also recognized her. Although picking herbs is not a complicated task, it is very important. If other medicinal herbs are mixed in and sold, big things will happen. So, Yun Xiangluo stayed behind and started working. Although she also studied medicine in her previous life, she had never done such physical work before, so she was quite energetic. In the eyes of the shopkeeper, this child was diligent and not lazy, and was a good child. After a whole day, except for 4 people eating and the shopkeeper not resting, the results were also gratifying. The medicinal herbs were picked out at a visible speed, and there was still 1/3 left. They could be picked up in less than a day tomorrow. The shopkeeper's heart finally calmed down. There was no need to worry about too much damage to the medicinal herbs. At dinner, the 3 of them, along with the shopkeeper, praised Xiangluo for her young age, but her work was not ambiguous or lazy at all. They also said that she would definitely be admitted to the Immortal Cloud sect. You can still hear the polite words from Xiangluo, and she won't take them seriously. Instead, she took the opportunity to inquire about the assessment rules of the Immortal Cloud sect with them. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. One opportunity. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. One opportunity. Only then did I realize that the assessment of the Immortal Cloud sect used to be divided into 2 items. The first was to recognize 100 herbs, and there was no problem with this step of achieving success. But another alchemy made her difficult. In her past life, she knew about medicinal pills, but pills and pills were 2 different things. Although she used to read fantasy novels frequently, she couldn't refine pills either. If you don't know how to refine pills, there may not be much left, and you can only be a miscellaneous disciple who does some miscellaneous work by planting medicinal herbs. She came to the Immortal Cloud sect to learn alchemy, but she doesn't want to become a miscellaneous disciple. What should she do? So much so that she didn't even sleep well at night. The next day, she got up early to work and couldn't fall asleep. When the shopkeepers arrived, they saw that she had already picked out a bunch of medicinal herbs, and they were even more satisfied with her. She was such a hard-working kid. Who knew she started working so early because she was too worried to sleep? In the morning, all the medicinal herbs were carefully selected, and the shopkeeper was very generous. She didn't ask her to do any other work, so dinner and accommodation remained the same. Last night and the whole morning, she couldn't come up with a solution, so she wanted to try and see if she could refine the pill before the alchemy assessment. But alchemy requires an alchemy furnace and medicinal herbs, as well as a prescription, and she doesn't have either. After lunch, Xiangluo told the shopkeeper that she wanted to buy a danlu. The shopkeeper enthusiastically said, "Young master, go to the shop and take a look. I'll give you the lowest price for the danlu you like." The shopkeeper has had a very good impression of young Xiangluo these past few days, and seeing her participate in the assessment at a young age on her own also adds to her sympathy. Xiangluo didn't set her sights high either. She chose a medium-sized alchemy furnace and used 10 inferior spirit stones. This is still a friendly price, but it's really not cheap. It's not that she doesn't buy inferior alchemy stoves, as the shopkeeper said. The inferior alchemy stoves are not well controlled, and when refining and exploding, the alchemy stoves are also prone to breakage. Although she currently does not lack spirit stones, as well as rewards from the original owner's parents and the selection of the royal family by the Qinyan sect, she will need to buy medicinal herbs for alchemy in the future. Although there are many spirit stones, they are not suitable for consumption. Besides, spirit stones can not only be used as money, but also as a major resource for cultivation. The spiritual energy inside can be directly absorbed for cultivation. If you buy 2 inferior alchemy furnaces, it's equivalent to the price of a medium-sized alchemy furnace. It's better to buy a more sturdy one in one go. Now she doesn't expect to have a precious alchemy furnace like in the fantasy text, as long as it can help her refine alchemy without being bad. Who can say for sure in the future, perhaps I also have the opportunity to get a treasure quilt and elixir. When she saw that there were still some books about alchemists selling in the herbal medicine shop, her eyes lit up. After flipping through them for a while, she chose the most basic alchemy book, but the key was that there were no such good books. Otherwise, these people would have come all the way to the Immortal Cloud sect to learn something. She chose another complete collection of herbs and wanted to use it to see if there were any herbs she didn't know. She had to be familiar with all of them. Who knows which one to test for? She didn't expect to catch the eye of that immortal cloud sect alchemist either, as long as she could pass the entrance exam and not be given the opportunity to learn as a laborer. There are 3 commonly used basic alchemy formulas and methods for refining in alchemy books, which is already very good for her who is completely ignorant. This prescription should be something that an alchemist knows, otherwise it wouldn't be possible to just sell it like this. She took 3 portions of the medicinal herbs needed for each of the 3 basic elixirs inside, and tomorrow was the assessment time. She immediately returned to her room, opened the book, and prepared to try refining the elixirs herself. It doesn't matter if there is no one to guide her. In her previous life, she just studied from books and practiced it herself. She didn't even develop good medical skills at a young age, and the pills she made had the best medicinal effects among her family. If she doesn't believe it, it won't work here. Half an hour later, she finished reading the 100 Herbs book and felt grateful. Fortunately, she bought a book to read. Otherwise, it would have been a mystery. There were many herbs here that she had never seen in her previous life and the original owner did not know. After all, the original owner did not learn alchemy. Fortunately, although reborn, my super strong memory is still there, almost unforgettable. Immediately, she picked up the alchemy book again and started reading it. Soon, she understood the book and the methods of alchemy, but she didn't know how to put it into practice. Alchemy is divided into 3 steps. The first step is to refine medicinal materials, the second step is to purify the drug solution, the third step is to condense the pill. It may seem simple, but she knows that every step is not that easy. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many people who didn't achieve much in their lifetime. She took out the medicinal herbs of the primary blood tonifying pill, arranged them in 3 portions, and took out the pill stove. She decided to first try using her own fire power to refine the pill, so she didn't buy the flint for alchemy. She believes that her fire power makes it easier to control the heat. Although alchemy only involves 3 steps, each step is related to the heat level, so controlling fire is quite important. The spiritual power was activated, and a cluster of small flames landed under the elixir. She observed the heat of the elixir and then tried to throw in a medicinal plant. There are only 13 types of medicinal herbs in the primary blood tonifying pill, which can be considered as the least amount of medicinal herbs in the primary pill formula. It is also a pill that beginners in alchemy will refine. After throwing the first medicinal herb into it, it was quickly melted by the elixir. Fortunately, with the experience of making pills in the previous life, she did not melt the herbs. She quickly threw in the second medicinal herb and stared at the elixir with high mental tension, mainly distracted by using spiritual power to control the fire. With 1 mind and 2 uses, it was evident how focused she was. After throwing all 13 medicinal herbs in, looking at the cloudy liquid in the furnace, she knew that the first step had been successful, and now she needed to proceed to the second step, purification. Purification is the process of extracting impurities from a medicinal solution, leaving only the portion with medicinal properties. This level is actually similar to how she used to make pills, but more precise. After all, purification directly determines the color of the pills you refine. The appearance of a pill depends first on its color, then on its roundness, and finally on how much of its medicinal properties are retained. Although it is not mentioned in this book, based on her previous experience of reading fantasy texts, high-quality pills will still have patterns, and the golden pattern is a symbol of perfect quality pills. Now it seems that the fantasy texts she used to read were not in vain, but now she's using them. At least she doesn't feel so unfamiliar during her first alchemy. However, she won't set her sights too high, just pray to be able to refine pills before the alchemy assessment. Even external disciples are stronger than miscellaneous workers, at least they have the opportunity to learn. In fact, even as a miscellaneous worker, she would still stay. The main sect recruits disciples every 3 years, with the highest age being 15 years old. She is 13 years old this year, which is already considered the oldest among new disciples. The next time she recruits disciples, she will be 16 years old, exceeding her age limit. Therefore, she only has this chance. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Participation in assessment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Participation in assessment. Yun Xiangluo focused on purification, and the medicine became clear at a visible speed to the naked eye. When impurities in the medicine were not visible to the naked eye, Yun Xiangluo began to coagulate pills. Ningdan is the last step, and many people fail at this step, so she is very careful. The medicine gradually starts to thicken, which is crucial at this point. If not handled properly, the pill will become sticky and become useless. Watching the pill round in the furnace and her heart pounding with fragrance, did she have a good talent for alchemy and become a pill the first time? At this moment, the flames under the elixir suddenly extinguished, and the elixirs inside the elixir instantly shattered. Yunxiang was stunned and estimated many possibilities of failure, but she didn't expect any problems with the duration of the flames. Her spiritual power was no longer sufficient to support the flames of the fire system, so at the final moment of alchemy, the flames extinguished, causing the alchemy to fail. Yun Xiangluo is a pity, which shows that her talent for alchemy is still good. If it weren't for the flame not being able to hold on, she would have succeeded in her first alchemy. Pouring out the medicine residue from the alchemy furnace and collecting the other 2 medicinal herbs, she didn't give up and sat cross-legged to start practicing, restoring the consumed spiritual power. Since it is due to insufficient spiritual power, then practice well. As long as the cultivation level is improved, the spiritual power for refining primary pills should be sufficient. That is to say, she only needs to advance 1 level before the alchemy assessment. In the royal training ground of the Tian Shan Empire, she advanced and practiced for 3 days. Not only did she stabilize her level 3 cultivation, but she also reached the peak of level 3, only 1 chance away from advancing to level 4. The spiritual energy of Xianyun town is also very strong, suitable for cultivation. She didn't even have dinner for this practice and continued practicing until early the next morning. The staff at the inn called out to her, but if she didn't leave, it wouldn't be enough time for the assessment, so she withdrew from the practice. Wash off the black and yellow on her face, and put on the girl's clothes. The original owner liked the red dress, and she also liked it, but it was too flashy. However, there were no other colored dresses in her storage ring. The original owner's mother made a dress for her that could last until she turned 16, all in red. She could only choose the most ordinary style of red dress to replace it, combed it in a bun, and didn't wear any accessories, just tied it with red ribbons. When she walked out of the room, the innkeeper was stunned when he saw the beautiful fairy-like girl and pointed at her, You. I haven't spoken for half a day. Yun Xiangluo smiled and said, for convenience, dress up as a boy. In today's assessment, boys are not allowed to dress up. The innkeeper's face turned red, and the boy with a black and yellow face suddenly transformed into a beautiful girl like a fairy. He felt embarrassed to look at it. Yun Xiangluo heard him repeatedly saying in his heart, it's so beautiful. This little girl looks so good, even more beautiful than those immortal alchemists of the Immortal Cloud sect. Young Xiangluo suppressed her smile, this guy is really cute. The guy quickly handed her the oil paper bag in his hand and said, you didn't eat last night. Since I saw you practicing, I didn't disturb you. This is the breakfast that the shopkeeper ordered to prepare for you. You can only eat on the way. Yun Xiangluo was not polite either. She didn't have time to buy breakfast, so she smiled and said, thank you, young man. Also, thank you to the shopkeeper for me. I will have the opportunity to come and see you in the future. Although she earned it through labor, the shopkeeper is also a kind-hearted person. If this good relationship is possible, she is still willing to make friends. The innkeeper scratched his head and said, the shopkeeper has gone to the herbal medicine shop. I will convey my gratitude for you. Excuse me, little brother. I'm leaving. Yun Xiangluo waved her hand and ran away with the oil paper bag. It's really too late if she doesn't leave anymore. Arriving at the office of the Immortal Cloud sect, almost everyone who participated in the assessment had arrived, and there were also those who rushed to come like her. Fortunately, they had time, otherwise she would have regretted it to death. They are all a group of young girls, and there are also many people at her age. After all, it is not easy to pass the assessment in one go, and many people have already come for the second time. But most of them are around 10 years old, and looking at those little radish, they feel a little embarrassed. I may not be as good as someone else's little carrot head. Despite their young age, they should be able to refine elixirs. There have been changes to the assessment rules this year. From now on, you have already started the assessment. Starting from here, follow the guide signs, climb to the mountain gate within an hour, and do not allow any help during this period, let alone taking pills. Those who violate the rules or fail to meet the deadline will be eliminated. This is the first level of assessment, starting. Yun Xiangluo tiptoed towards the direction of the sound, and saw a middle-aged man wearing a blue brocade robe with a pattern embroidered on it, which should be a totem of the Immortal Cloud sect. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone ran in one direction. Yunxiang was taken aback for a moment and walked in that direction. For an hour, if it were changed to the time of her past life, it would be 2 hours. This mountain is not very high, and everyone has cultivation. Can't we still climb it? However, since this is the first level of assessment, there must be a reason for it. She dare not underestimate it, but she will not compete with others. Anyway, the assessment is to achieve it within time, and she does not want to compete for first place as a leading bird. A young man in a gorgeous brocade robe ran forward and glanced at her. Seeing her appearance, a stunning look flashed through his eyes. He stopped and said with a somewhat proud expression, "Hey, what's your name?" Yun Xiangluo inexplicably glanced at him, a young man of her age who looked quite handsome. She ignored him and continued walking forward. Seeing that Yun Xiangluo ignored him, the young man became a bit embarrassed and angry. He chased after him and said, "You look pretty. Follow me, I'll cover you up in the future." Yun Xiangluo is speechless. Who is this arrogant and spoiled child from? At what age, are you here to learn alchemy or to recruit beautiful women? Still indifferent, keep moving forward. The young man's face darkened and his tone became displeased as he said, "I am a third-grade alchemist. I must be an inner disciple. Follow me and you will benefit in the future." Yun Xiangluo was a bit surprised. He was actually a third-grade alchemist, and he couldn't even refine basic pills himself. Seeing the envy in her eyes, the young man was extremely proud and said, "I have already checked. Among the people who participated in the assessment this time, I am the only third-grade alchemist. If you miss this opportunity, I won't give you another chance." The implication is that I must be the first person in this assessment. The inner disciples are stable, and if you are sensible, you should quickly agree. Yun Xiangluo shook her head, and at first glance, she saw the young master who was used to being held up in the big family. She didn't like the tone of charity, and she never thought about relying on anyone. With a moment of thought, I wanted to hear his thoughts and see what the young man was thinking. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. The Son of Qi Yun. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. The son of Qi Yun. I heard him muttering to himself, "I am a prophet who has lived a lifetime. I know many things that the world doesn't know. In this life, I will surely shine brightly. It's your blessing to see you, at least not for good." Yun Xiangluo was stunned. There was actually someone who was reborn in this world. According to his meaning, he was reborn himself once, different from someone like her who was reborn from another world. Is he the kind of reincarnated son of luck male protagonist depicted in fantasy books? Unfortunately, this is not the fantasy book she has read, otherwise she would have known the story plot and taken precautions in advance. Then I heard him say to himself, I came 3 years earlier in my previous life, but I didn't know that there was such a beautiful girl in this assessment. I haven't seen her in the sect since then, so I probably didn't pass the assessment. I happen to be able to accept her. Although Yun Xiangluo was shocked, she immediately felt relieved. Even if he had a prophet about this world and it would shine brightly in the future, she didn't care. She just walked her own path. As long as she worked hard enough, she could still walk her own path. She was well aware that no world could stand alone. If you don't leave, it's not necessarily who the first one is. Yun Xiangluo pointed to the person in front who had already run away in a swarm to remind him. The young man suddenly understood what Yun Xiangluo meant. He had rejected him, his face was ugly, and he thought to himself. You actually rejected me. You know what you rejected, and you will regret it in the future. My aunt is the 5th grade alchemist of the Immortal Cloud sect, the leader of a peak, and with her own talent, she can say that the sect leader should accept her as her disciple. In this life, her starting point is high, and the Immortal Cloud sect can walk horizontally. In the future, even if she asks for her, she will not accept her. I offended him in the Immortal Cloud sect, let's see how she can survive in the future. Glancing at the fragrant fragrance, she snorted and ran forward. The several young girls following the boy glanced at her, with a look on their faces. Do you know who he is? Do you know what you refused? What a fool. Yun Xiangluo naturally heard the young man's voice and couldn't believe that his aunt was actually the head of the Xianyan sect. Sure enough, the reborn people brought benefits. Look, they are backed by a big tree for shade, and they have already been designated as disciples of the sect leader. Yun Xiangluo didn't think much either. Although she had offended the young man, his aunt couldn't possibly cover up the sky in the Xianyan sect. She just avoided ordering their aunt and nephew herself. Setting aside the reborn youth, as we move forward and ponder, what is the assessment of the Immortal Cloud sect? What is the principle of an alchemy sect assessing mountaineering? The young man quickly disappeared with the person. A little girl, who was about the same speed as her, glanced at her and reminded her, that young man is the legitimate young master of the Miao family. He is only 14 years old and has reached the peak of spiritual level 9. His aunt is the head of the first peak of the Xianyan sect. If you offend him, even if you enter the Xianyan sect, life will not be easy. Yun Xiangluo glanced at the little girl and said, would you agree to him instead? At the same time, listening to her voice, the little girl screamed crazily in her heart, an ignorant stinky girl. The little girl choked, gave her a white glance, and walked past her. Yun Xiangluo touched her nose, she really just asked, what does a glance at by she mean? In my heart, I still scold her for not knowing what's good or bad. Is agreeing to the young man's request considered good or bad? Forget it, it seems that the little girl is 2 years younger than her. Don't argue with the children yourself. Due to physical reasons in her past life, she never treated herself like a child. When she came here, she was left alone and naturally couldn't be a child. Keep moving upwards, and when she has walked for a quarter of an hour, she will know what the assessment is. There is resistance coming from the stone steps under her feet, and spiritual power is needed to resist this kind of assistance. Is this an assessment grade? She doesn't have an advantage in this, after all, children around the age of 10 have higher grades than her, and her grades are not the lowest among those who participate in the assessment. However, even so, she will not give up. She walked steadily upwards without haste or slowing down. Fortunately, she practiced all night last night, and at this time her spiritual power was in a saturated state. Looking up, the people in front have slowed down their speed, but there are also those with good cultivation who are still desperately running upwards. Yun Xiangluo furrowed her beautiful eyebrows, and the people who came to participate in the assessment had different levels of cultivation. This assessment should not assess their cultivation strength, after all, it was not a secret when registering. Moreover, there is no requirement for admission based on ranking, only that it is sufficient to arrive within the specified time, which may test perseverance. If that's the case, no matter what cultivation you have, you will encounter challenges on this mountain road, and it's not something you can reach earlier with high cultivation. After figuring it out, she became even less anxious and slowly outputted her spiritual power. As long as she could resist the current resistance, she didn't pursue speed. At this moment, in front of a huge screen inside the gate of Xianyun sect, the figures of the examiners constantly appeared. 7 extraordinary 6 men and 1 woman sat in chairs, looking at the screen. The Xianyun sect is divided into 7 peaks, with the main peak of the sect being Xianyun Peak, while the other 6 peaks are Tianhong Peak, Xingyue Peak, Tianshui Peak, Baichao Peak, Qingzhou Peak, and Qiandu Peak. There is no one who is calm, said the head of Tianhong Peak regretfully. Why not? Look at that little girl in a red dress, she's never in a hurry, always moving up at a speed. The subject of Xingyue Peak said leisurely. The lord of Tianhong Peak glanced at the little girl wearing a red dress, who was also named young Xiangluo. With such low cultivation, he said disdainfully, you know how to attract attention at such a young age. Being so ostentatious may not necessarily be a good character. That's not necessarily the case, maybe they're wearing red for good luck. The Star Moon Peak Master sneered, unsure if he was deliberately opposing the Tianhong Peak Master or for some reason. The Heavenly Rainbow Peak Master gave him a fair glance and said, if you like it, you can accept it. The prerequisite is that she can be admitted to the inner gate. I don't think her cultivation is high. Everyone present couldn't tell. The little girl was already 12 or 13 years old at first glance, but her cultivation was only at level 3. Such a cultivation talent cannot be described well. The leader of Baichao Peak was very helpless. Every time these two met, they would do the same. They quickly changed the topic and said, I haven't seen my senior uncle in these years. How come you're interested this year? The person he called his senior uncle was the leader of Qiandu Peak, a middle-aged man wearing a black robe. The change in assessment rules this year was also due to a sentence from his senior uncle. The Qiandu Peak Master focused his gaze on the screen and directly replied upon hearing the words of the Baichao Peak Master, my disciple is among these people. Everyone was surprised to see him. The 7 peaks, including the sect leader, had received many disciples, except for this 1000 Poison Peak leader and their junior uncle, the youngest disciple of the Master Ancestor, who did not have a single disciple. He never came to recruit disciples, saying that his master-disciple relationship had not yet arrived. Surprisingly, he said his disciple came this time. Who? Are they going to have junior brothers and junior sisters? End of this chapter.